Hello, my good people. How are you, my people? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm so glad and I'm so happy to be back again. And I'm so excited for the love you're showing me here. It's actually giving me more zeal, more energy to keep coming back. Thank you so much for the subscriptions. Thank you so much for coming, watching to my videos, for those who are commenting, for those who are liking. I'm humbled. Thank you so much. Keep coming, keep sharing, so that we can come and engage in more talks. We can come and help each other in this life that we live in, because we can't make it on our own. That's why we're here to talk, to share, and to help each other. Welcome all. I'm happy that you clicked in, and I'm happy that you love me. That's why you came here. Thank you all. I love you guys. And today I came with a talk that is so key and it's so very much important in our lives. And as I said earlier before, I'm trying to touch on areas that covers each and everyone's life. Areas that we encounter one day and another, issues that we come by in this life that we live in. And today we'll be talking a topic about wilderness. And to narrow it down, we'll be talking about godly wilderness. And when we hear the word wilderness, I know there's much that comes to our minds. And just as we know wilderness, that is what we'll be talking about. To start, my baby, defining wilderness. Wilderness is a land, or it's a region that there is no cultivation that goes on there, and there's no any human activity that is usually carried on in that place. So it's just a bare land. It's like a neglected place, because any vegetation that happens in the wilderness, it's just natural. It's not tamed by anyone. It's not nurtured by anyone. It's just natural. So in one way or another, wilderness is a neglected place. It's a place on its own. But now today we'll be talking about godly wilderness. And adding godly into wilderness, that means that there's a wilderness that God takes people. And speaking of that, I know there are many people who relate to it, because I know there are several people who have been into that godly wilderness. It's there. And whatever goes on in godly wilderness, it relates still to the natural wilderness that we know of. Because as much as we know, in the wilderness, there's no water, there is no food, there is no shelter. You just depend on the nature to feed you, because there's nothing that is cultivated. So in one or another, it relates the same to the godly wilderness. Let's start by this. In the wilderness which God takes to people, whatever much goes on there, it's a time of trials, it's a time of temptation, it's a time of testing, it's a time of preparation, maybe for a certain mission or a certain calling. And also, it's a time of revelation. It's a place where God reveals to you things. All those issues happens in the wilderness that is godly. And today we'll be basing most of our concepts from the Bible. And then there's a story that is well known by every one of us about the children, the Israelites, who were gotten from Egypt to the promised land, and in between, God had to take them through the wilderness. Reason being, there's something that He wanted to teach them. He wanted to humble them and to know and he wanted to teach them God's dependence. When we read that story, one thing that we can get to know is that the distance from Egypt to the promised land, if they took just a normal journey, it could have taken them something to do with 11 days and somehow. That's what the Bible tells us. But it took them 40 years. You can imagine 40 years in the wilderness. Why did they have to spend 40 years in the wilderness? One, it's because they weren't obedient to God. And even to some points, God had to kill the forefathers. And for every one of us who has ever gone through that story, and you have read it and you have understood it, most of the people who got to the promised land, they are not the same people who are in Egypt. It's a different generation, because the generation was much rebellious. They couldn't obey until God had to extract an entire generation, have a new generation, and now take the new generation to the promised land. Because you can be a witness, if the children of Israel were obedient to God, I'm sure it could not have spent them entire 40 years in the wilderness. Their act of rebellion made them to spend so long in the wilderness. That is one thing that we learn. Actually, how we behave in the wilderness matters a lot. Something else that we get to learn from this story, when they're in the wilderness, we see even them telling Moses that, why didn't you allow us to die in Egypt? Why did you get us out of Egypt? And they are the same children who cry to God to come and remove them from Egypt and to take them to another place, because the Egyptians were really harassing them. The life there was so hard. But when God took them in the wilderness, they even started remembering. The Bible tells us that they started even remembering the nice pumpkins they used to eat in Egypt. That's another thing that we do in life. We are in God's wilderness and we focus so much on the good things or the things that we used to have when we were there out. Because what happens when we are in a God's wilderness, God extracts us from our comfort. If at all God wants to teach you dependence on Him, He will extract that what you love so much, that what you depend on so much. There's some people who are so cringy to their work. At times God can extract that work. Yeah. So that He can teach you to depend on Him. Sometimes God can even extract that marriage, which you feel it's the place that you're so comfortable in, so that you can know it comes from God. At times God even brings illnesses and sicknesses, maybe in ourselves or even our family members or people who are close to us, so that we can get to depend on God and know that He is a healer and He heals. So there are so many things that God brings. At times maybe He is calling you for a mission, or maybe He is even calling you to His ministry, and He'll take you to the wilderness so that He can get to mold you, He can get to teach you. When we are in the wilderness, one thing that we should do, don't focus on where you have come from. Your focus should be where you're going. Your focus should be, what is God teaching me? Your focus should be, after this, what will I have? What will I have gotten? Will it be in vain being in the wilderness? Because one thing I'm sure of, and I can say it so confidently, that God always has a reason for us to be in a certain wilderness. Yes. If at all it's a certain temptation that He wants us to undergo, we must. As much as we may try, as much as we may refuse, as much as we may deny, If God has said at a certain duration of time you'll be in the wilderness, imagine you will. He just has his own ways of doing things. Have you ever heard of stories of people who are very rich and God extracted all their sources of wealth, all their richnesses? They were in a very high rank, but God lowered them. There's something that God wanted to teach them. And he saw with that point of richness that they are in, they cannot hear God. He has to bring them to a certain level so that they can get to be obedient to him. That's how God does. At times you may be tested even in an area that you never thought will ever be an issue to you. God's testing are at times so funny. At times you get to a situation and you're like, how did I even get up here? And getting to think of it, you'll be like, this one must be God related. Because when we are in the wilderness, God at times stops everything else. Have you ever been into a point that you are undergoing an issue, everything is quiet, everyone is quiet? May it be your family members, may it be your friends, may it be your colleagues, may it be those people you feel they are so close to you, they are all quiet. Yani there's nothing that is speaking, there's nothing that is happening, all situations that stand still. Imagine God makes things to be stagnant. Everything stops so that he can glorify himself in that situation. Because when you're in the wilderness, there must be something God wants to teach you. There must be something. It's either it's a test, it's either it's a temptation, it's either it's a calling, it's either it's a revelation he's giving you, or maybe he wants even to harbor you in life. But there's something that God always wants to do with us when we're in the wilderness. And it's not good at all. The wilderness is the worst place you can never be in. Because reading from the stories in the Bible, at times I love stories of the Bible. They are so good, especially the stories in the Old Testament. You get to read stories and you're like, so even some of these things used to happen. You get to learn a lot. And it's good at times, by the way. At times, just pick a story of a certain character in the Bible, go through it. Yeah, get to know how God used to deal with people in those past days. It even gives you revelation of so many things in the life you are living in. Yes, it's good to make a Bible a good storybook. It has good stories. And at times, as you're going through the Bible, other than the first, in the story of the Israelites, one thing that we get to know, they were in the wilderness for 40 years. We get to read in places where there was no food in the wilderness and God used to provide food. We see God providing manna. And the Bible tells us that he provided manna, food that they had never seen in Egypt, even their fathers had never seen. That's what God does. At times, who could have thought that there's something that God can just create in the wilderness to feed those children of Israel? But he just came up with something. Manna that was falling from heaven. Just imagine. They had to know that there's God. They felt that Egypt is the only place they could have gotten something to eat. They felt that the only thing that could have helped them is Moses getting them back to Egypt. But God had to show them otherwise. No. I'll even deal with you, I'll help you, and I'll provide for you, even here in the wilderness, so that you can know I'm the one who have brought you here, and I have a mission for you. One thing we read in the Bible is that those guys, they never changed clothes. Yani their clothes never got torn for 40 years. You can imagine wearing the same clothes for 40 years. At times when you think about God, you get to desire to know him more. Because the things he does and the things he did in those days, they are good things. We get to read that their clothes never got torn, their legs were never swollen, they used to walk. And the funniest thing is that in the wilderness, they could have passed through to the promised land. But God had to make them go around the wilderness, yes, go around the wilderness until he felt fulfilled that they have known his God. God has to glorify himself in our lives. God has to bring situations in our lives so that he can be glorified. What we need to know is that let's be vigilant, have that spirit of discernment, that you'll get to know when God is taking you in a point of wilderness. So it will not be a point of complaint, it will not be a point of rebelling, but it will be a time of total surrender. If the Israelites surrendered to God immediately, they were out of Egypt. They could not have spent 40 years in the wilderness, but they had to because they were rebellious. They even abused Moses. They even mocked God. But God had to ensure they stay in that place so that they lack water, they lack food, they lack anything else that they needed, so that they can know the only help they have is from God. The same way is what God does to us. Has God ever taken you through a point in life that you try everything, and you're like, God, you know what? I'm at my last point. I've surrendered. Imagine at that point it's when God comes. At that point is when God comes. So one thing that we should embrace, we should get to know is that when you're in God's wilderness, just try to surrender as early as possible to avoid spending a long time in the wilderness. Let's give ourselves to God. He just do whatever he wants to do with us. Because at times you will rebel, you will reject, you will keep on mocking God, you will hate God. Some of even people, you get out of godly ways. You just do all sort of manner. But on the long run, for you to be out of that wilderness, you will still get back to that God. It's very, very important. We read a story of Haggai. Haggai was the wife to Abraham, and she had a son who was Ishmael. It got a time that Abraham sent them to the wilderness, and in the wilderness, what Haggai did, when the bread and the water that they had gotten from, as they were going to the wilderness, when it ended, it got to a point and Haggai felt that if at all God does not provide water, this son of mine will die. And what did she do? She totally surrendered to God. And she told God. She cried to God that my son gonna die. And what did God do? Imagine God provided. Yes, God provided water in the wilderness. Because that's what he does. You can't call unto God and he fails to answer. In whichever situation you are in. And still in the same, when the angel visited Haggai and Ishmael, one thing that God did to not just even providing water, he blessed Haggai and the entire generation of Ishmael. The entire generation was blessed. And even today the Bible tells us it's blessed. That's what God did. We get to read a story of someone like Elijah. When Elijah got to know that Jezebel was looking for him and she was about to kill him, he ran into the wilderness. And he got to a point and he sat and he told God to come and kill him wherever he was. When we get to read about the encounter of Elijah in the wilderness, he went and hid somewhere in a cave. God used to provide to him food. He used to send ravens. Ravens are birds. There are certain birds that the Bible tells us very well, and even when you get to study about them, they feed on meat. And God used to set the meat to take it to Elijah. And you know what? They never ate the meat even a single day. How it used to happen, only God knows. That's what happens when you surrender to God. When you're in a point that you feel, enyewe, this is a wilderness, surrender to God. Give it all to God. Tell God to come and take control. When you're in the wilderness, that is a time of prayer. It's a time of total surrender. It's a time of giving it all to Him. It's a time of running, getting to know, why am I here? God, why have you brought me into this situation? It's not a time of mocking God. It's not a time of hating on God. It's not a time of hating anything that is godly, because that's what we do as human. Because godly wilderness is not easy. It's bitter. It's something that, and at times it doesn't take a day or two. There are some people who will be in the wilderness for a year, others for months, and even others for years. Because as I said, God created us and He knows us. At times, if at all He wants to teach me something, He knows my heart that He can teach me in a month and I will learn. There's another person who, the same lesson that God was teaching me, he or she cannot learn in a month. Her heart needs to be hardened more so that he or she can submit to God's will. And maybe such a person will get to learn that thing in a year. That's why we say we cannot be the same. If God wants to teach me, or God is calling me even for ministry, He will take me through maybe a situation that I'll get to know for sure this is God. There's another person who even gets such a thing maybe through a dream. Whatever happens to me can never happen to the other person. That's why I'm saying that experiences in the wilderness are different. At times you may never know even how to handle the situation. We see someone like Job. Job in the Bible, he gets to lose everything that he had. And still he didn't mock God. I usually try to imagine putting myself in his shoes. Imagine you have everything. You lose everything. Today you lose this, tomorrow you lose this, the other day. Yani in a law, to a point that he lost even his children. But that wasn't enough to make him mock God. Oh, how I wish to have such kind of zeal and love for Christ. That you love God to an extent that there's nothing that you can go on in this life that can make you hate Him. It's not that easy as it sounds. Because life issues at times, they distort our mind, they distort our thinking. At times you get to realize way later, oh, I wish I knew this was God. I could have submitted, I could have surrendered very, very, very early on. I'm one person, there's a time I can say that I was in a wilderness. And thank God that what I did more is getting into prayers. Because it gets easy when you're in the wilderness and you become much committed and you love God more. You become much committed to Him. Because you don't struggle to know when He's talking to you. You don't struggle to know when He's directing you to a certain path. You don't get to struggle when He's giving you a certain maybe mission or a certain assignment. It is usually very easy. But most of the times when it gets us off guard, we don't realize, all we do is hate God. Because there are points in life that comes you even try to ask yourself, for sure, you mean God you exist? For sure, you mean God you love me? I don't know whether you've ever gotten to a point that you're not even questioning God's existence. You're even questioning, are you sure God, you're the one who brought me to this life? Are you sure you had a good purpose for me in this life? If you have never gotten to such points, just thank God and pray that you never get yourself into some situations. Because there's sometimes things comes to your life and you're like, where? But the good thing is that God always comes. He always comes. It doesn't matter how long it might take, but He always comes. He always comes. And he always comes with a solution. He always comes with victory. And he always comes with a lesson. You can't come out of the wilderness just like that. And one thing that he says is that he tempts us, or he gets us through temptations that he knows that we can be able to handle. So everything that you're going through, imagine God knows that you can handle it. So don't allow the situation to succumb you, or don't allow the situation maybe to bring you down, because God knows very well that you are equal to that temptation. God knows very well that you are equal to the situation you are going through. So just go by his word. He tells us that there's no word that he speaks that just goes in vain. Yes. So be that confident. And even as you pray in that confidence that God, your word tells me so well that you never tempt us beyond our ability. And with the same confidence, I believe that this situation that you have brought, that this wilderness that I'm in, I'll come out victorious. And God never ashames us. He will always glorify himself in that situation. So don't allow that situation to bring you down. Don't allow that situations to discourage you. Come out victorious. We must get to our promised land. Yes, we must get to our promised land. We call them, these are just waves. Yes, they are just waves. And steadiness is coming. Situations are so many we go through in this life. Many. Every day you go to the social media, you get to read of new stories each and every day. So many things are happening, especially in the world we are in. So many things are happening. But I would like to adjust to, why can't we turn back to God? Why can't we at times bring God in the contest we are in? God, I've lost this job. I know there's a reason. There's a reason. May I not miss out on what God you want me to learn in this? And in the same case, know that God, you're the provider. Provide me another job. In every situation, maybe be sickness, bring God in it. Speak a word in it. Let's run at times to handle our issues with God's word. Because imagine, that word tells us very well that God is not a man that he can lie. And he's not a son of man that he will speak of something and he fails to do it. So anything that is written in the word of God, imagine, he does. There is no word that is written, because that's his word. He has spoken it. That is in vain. He said that in the beginning there was God. And in the beginning there was the word. And the word was God. I'm one person who knows to handle this life with scriptures. That's why I imagine you to make a Bible your friend. Get to know the word. Get to know the word. Anything that comes by your life, you always be speaking a word, because you know very well it's written. Yes. That's what even Jesus Christ did when he was in the wilderness. Satan was telling him this, and Jesus would respond, because it's written. That's the confidence that God has given us, to claim whatever he has written in his word. Let's make that our lifestyle. That anything that ever comes to your word, in your world, in the life you are living in, you'll be speaking to it. Speak to situations. Speak to circumstance. Speak to hardships. Yes, speak to them. Because God hears. We say that the battle that we are battling is not against flesh and blood, but it's against principalities. At times you're even fighting with spirits, things that we don't know. So you have to keep speaking the words. You have to keep silencing the devil with the word. But you can't speak a word that you don't know. Yes. Get to know the word. Get to know whatever God has promised you, so that it will be very easy for you to claim the promise. You'll be in a situation and you'll be telling God, have you not promised me? Have you not promised me? Have you not said? So let's equip ourselves with the word. That is one of the best way to handle wildernesses in our lives. Because let me tell you, wilderness will always come. Especially for those who love God. Especially for those who have a walk with God. Those people who have a relationship with God. Let me tell you, tests will always come. As in school, we always get tested to go to the other class. The same way with our journey with God, we will always be tested in this life that we live in. God is our maker, He is our creator. Let me tell you that He will always be bringing issues. So that one, we may remember that He is God. He may glorify Himself in us. Because we will call Him God a healer when we see Him heal. When we read that He healed. We call Him a provider because we see Him provide. And we have heard and read of stories that He provided. He has to keep glorifying Himself in our lives. So one thing I assure you, that wilderness will always come. The secrets of surviving in the wilderness, one, it's prayers. And not just prayers, praying the word. Yes. Tell God, have you not told me this? Pray the word. Something else that we need to do when we're in the wilderness, total surrender. Totally surrender to God. Stop relying on other sources of help. That is not a time for running to family members, running to friends, running to colleagues. It's a time of totally surrendering to God. Something else that we need to do when we're in the wilderness, we need to take time to learn what God is teaching us. Because it's so bad to get to a wilderness once, and second, getting to learn the same thing. So get a time of asking yourselves, I was in this situation, what did God want me to learn? So get to learn. Get to know just something from that word. In the wilderness is a place that we need to be very obedient. Because if the children of Israel were obedient, well much obedient, they couldn't have spent the many hours they spent, the many years they spent in the wilderness. So, obedience is key. Something else that we should also have is that desire to change. If God is teaching us humbleness, let's talk to it. If Christ is teaching us giving, let's talk to it. Let's be willing to change. And with the 5 things, prayers, very key, total surrender, obedience, taking our lessons, and also willingness to change. With those 5, we'll be able to survive and get through victorious in the wilderness. Because one thing I assure you, wilderness will always be, even there's someone as we speak right now, they're in a certain wilderness, and they're asking themselves, what did I do wrong to go through this? Imagine you did nothing wrong. Where did I mess? Imagine you never messed anywhere. You didn't. We even get to read in the Bible that there's a time the disciples went and got a certain man who was bright, and they asked Jesus, what did he do to be born like this? And Jesus told them, he did nothing. Some of the situations you're going through, it's not because you did anything. It's not because your parents did anything. It's because God wants to glorify Himself in your life. Why can't you allow God's glory to be seen in your life? Why can't you allow the glory of God to be seen in your life, to be seen in your family, to be seen in your career, to be seen in your children? Let's just allow God to do His will. We are work of His hands. Let's just allow Him to do His will. Let's surrender to God. Let's allow Himself to glorify Himself with our lives. Because He created us so that we can glorify Him. And at times, He has to be seen in those situations. Maybe by you allowing God to glorify Himself in your life, there's someone who will get to love this God. There's someone who will get to desire this God. Why can't we surrender to God? Why can't He allow ourselves to be used by God? And by that, yes, wildernesses will come, but they will not bring us down. Wilderness will come, but they will not get us out of Christ's love. Wildernesses will come, but they will make us stronger than we were before. That's the only way. Let's love God, and let's always totally surrender to Him. I love you guys. Nawapenda sana. And for today, let's wrap it at there. I'll get to do more of God's teachings. I'm one person who really I love God so much, and I'll be bringing God's teachings each now and then, so that we can get run as much as we're trying to handle life, because there's no way we can have a balanced life when our spiritual life is not nourished. So as much as we try to empower our other life, we have also to empower our spiritual life. It's very important and it's very key. I love you so much, guys. Thank you so much for your time. Keep coming, keep subscribing, keep tuning in. And in case you have anything that you would like us to address, you can comment so that we can get to talk about it as the days go by. Thank you so much for your time. Bye bye. Until next time, love you guys. Bye.